Good afternoon. It is 2 o'clock, and it's time for us to get started with the Dean's Forum. This year is the last forum for the semester, and we look forward to doing this again in the spring semester. And today we do have 2 guest speakers. Not that they are foreign, they are here, they are one of us, you know. But our speakers for today, they are going to share with us important information that concerns the institution as a whole. We are going to start off with Mr. Lee Butler, our Director of Institutional Research and Assessment, and he's going to talk about assessment matters as well as other relevant information he wished to share with us today. Thank you, Mr. Butler, please.
I thought I was going second.
Yeah, that was the plan, speech.
Okay, so Dr. eBay asked me to come speak about assessment issues, assessment matters, and I think I'm seeing a fair number of students in here. If you're a student, please raise your hand. Okay, so we've got students here, we've got faculty and staff. Now, I could talk about this in a lot of different ways, but I never get to talk to students about it, and y'all are the people who are being assessed, so I want to talk to you for a little bit. How many of you are aware that in your classes you were assessed on 6 core outcomes that the state of Texas mandates? No one. Yeah. It's a closely held secret that no one wants to talk about. Basically, what we do is we identify an artifact that you've produced in your class, and then we evaluate it on a cycle for critical thinking, communication, empirical and quantitative reasoning, teamwork, social responsibility, and personal responsibility. Now, these assessment competencies were not chosen by the college. They were mandated by the Texas legislature and the governor. And then the coordinating board, which coordinates higher education in the state, got together a bunch of faculty from 2-year and 4-year institutions and kind of narrowed everything down into measurable concepts, and this is what we've got. So, whenever you're writing your next paper or doing your next assignment, that's one of the things that might happen to that assignment, is it gets assessed for your ability to do that. Now, for you, it doesn't really impact your grade because grading and assessment are not the same. Grading is your performance on the collection of work that you've been assigned. And that can range from, if you're writing an English paper on a topic, your awareness of audience, your grammatical mechanics, your ability to communicate, all of this wrapped up in a package. But if your English professor is assessing your communication skills, that's different. Now, the faculty of the college took each one of those rubrics, a subset of the faculty, a group, said, okay, we're going to identify the critical elements that define college level performance in communication, critical thinking, etc. So they did that. So whenever a faculty member assesses your work, they have a predefined, faculty agreed upon rubric that they match up all the criteria. And if you meet all the criteria, you're college competent. If you don't, you're not. That's not a bad thing, because a freshman in college probably isn't going to be college level competent at the community college level in something like communication or critical thinking. I mean, education isn't, where they come in and flip that switch on the top of your head, raise the skull off, pour knowledge in, shut it off, and send you on your way. That's not what we do here. William Butler Yeats has this great quote: education is the lighting of a fire, not the filling of a pail. Okay, so when we take that particular approach to education, and we look at these core competencies and how they impact our students, or measure our students' performance, we're looking for that fire. We're not looking for facts that we poured into your head. We're looking for those higher order skills that you're learning just by virtue of going to college. It's in the air around here, hopefully. If not, we're going to be asphyxiating real soon. So that's the student story for our assessment of core competencies. On the faculty side, there's a lot of classes and a lot of students and a lot of works that they have to consider, and they look at it from the context of these rubrics, and they make decisions based on how well you do or how well you've communicated your performance. And it's interesting that we're in this conversation about assessment because we don't really like to do it. None of us like to do it because it's not that it's a bad thing. It's just it seems like it's another layer on top of a lot of work we already do. And this is beyond just the core assessment. It's also our departmental assessment because we're held accountable by the Southern Association and by the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board to look at our processes and say, okay, are we doing this as well as we can? And how do we know this? We have to measure it, and we have to report that back every 10 years to the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. So we stay focused in our jobs so much that we never get a chance to raise our head up and say, am I really doing this right? Am I really doing the best job that I can do here? And if I think I'm not, I want to put this plan in place. Well, how do I know if this plan's even accomplishing anything? So when we talk about assessment, that's what we're trying to get to. It's not a pro forma exercise where we go through and check a bunch of boxes. Ideally, our assessment should say, what am I doing? Am I doing it as well as I can? And if our department isn't doing it as well as we possibly can, how do we make it better? Because it's all about getting better. Whether it's the core competencies, it's about helping students get better at those 6 competencies. If it's a departmental or a non-instructional area, it's about getting better at reaching out to students and helping get them in college. It's about processing them through registration more effectively, getting more programs out there to get students jobs if they're in the workforce area. So there's a lot of different dynamics that go into assessment. Now, out of assessment, because I'm the guy, I'm just one person, I can't divide myself and do all that stuff and work more than 8 hours a day. So it often looks like when people do assessment, it just disappears into a black hole, that nothing ever occurs with this assessment. Well, sometimes that is the case because time constraints and time limitations. But we're working on 2 fronts to help alleviate that. And she's fixing to throw something at me, but Dana Brewer is on our assessment committee for the college, and Dr. Brewer has generously agreed to assume a leadership role as our chair of the assessment committee so that she can help coordinate our efforts to really take a look at assessments and determine, are these the best that we can do? And if not, how do we come together as a community and make a constructive program so that our assessments get better? We know what we're doing better, and we're able to make plans and execute them more effectively, more efficiently, and do what assessment is supposed to do. On the second front, which is more me, is looking at the assessment data generated by our core assessments, okay? Because all of that information that faculty record about your system, about the students' work, comes back to me, and I've got a database with, since 2014, of student performance. Now, what I've begun doing, and this will be for a future program, I've begun taking the assessment information that we've collected today, and I'm marrying it with student information out of our database for the college. So I can tie a student's assessment back to how many semester credit hours you took that semester, your cumulative semester credit hours, your GPA for the semester, for the cumulative, all of the information that we have available in the system. I can match it up. Now, it's not just an arbitrary process, okay? What I'm doing is trying to find patterns. And if any of you understand or have ever experienced data, that's what you do. You look for patterns. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of random numbers in a chart. And data, especially in this sense, they don't just wait out in the world hoping that some human will come by and say, hey, I think I'll look at that. Data are created whenever we come to the world with a question and we say, why is it this way? So we define the data through our questions. So when we're asking, how do students perform on critical thinking? We've helped define the data. Okay, we've created the possibility for their data to be data in that context. So then we have this set of rubrics that we apply to an artifact in critical thinking. That generates the actual numbers that we look at. And again, just the assessment numbers for critical thinking, for example, really don't tell us anything until we start looking at the broader picture of the student's career at the college and say what kind of patterns rise to the top. And that's the next process. So as I do that, then hopefully we'll be able to come back next semester sometime or next year, and we'll have a data presentation when we talk about, here are the patterns that we're seeing. I've done some preliminary work, but it is not solidified in my head, so I can't quote things off the top of my head about this. So it'll have to wait. So as we move forward, for faculty in the core assessment, some of the significant changes that are going to occur will be basically growing off of our move to Canvas and the fact that all of the recording of the assessments for student performance on the 6 core competencies will occur in Canvas. So there won't be any more spreadsheets shifted around or anything like that. The advantage to that, now that we have this tool, is that where we have to, we've got a means to leverage that technology to get the data we need. So all courses have to evaluate critical thinking and communication. That's what the state has mandated, so that's what we have to do. So we'll take every course that's in Canvas starting in the spring, and it will be evaluated based on the student's performance in critical thinking and communication. The other 4 are more flexible. It doesn't make sense to evaluate empirical and quantitative reasoning in an English class, unless it's a technical writing class and they're doing math or empirical reasoning. So what we're going to do is a committee is going to look at a course mapping, and where it makes the most sense to evaluate core competencies, that's where we're going to evaluate them. But we're not just going to cast a net and do this blanket process that doesn't make any sense. We're trying to come at this with a little more thought and a little more intention to make it a little more reasonable. Yes, it's going to be a lot of work in the beginning as we get used to it and start acclimating to the process. But no one will be evaluating 6 competencies in every course for every student. No one will be doing that. You will be looking at critical thinking and communications for every course because we have to. So, at that point, the other side, and I spoke briefly on that, but the plan is for departmental assessment, non-instructional assessment, is to get a feedback loop going, because that's what we're lacking right now. We need a means to say, okay, Ms. Starr has put in her plan for the Weatherford College Library. Who looks at it? Who says, this is a good plan, this is a plan that needs some work, this is a plan that won't work? Okay? Who says, does the assessment work and does the assessment not work? So what we're planning on doing is the committee, led by Dr. Brewer, will divide up the non-instructional areas of the college, and we'll start evaluating the assessments. We'll look at them and say, you know, first of all, we'll develop a rubric, and then we'll say, does this meet all the points of the rubric? Are we able to say that this thing is working the way we want it to? And then we'll give you feedback, we'll give you recommendations. Hopefully building a community process of communication where you submit your assessments, we give you feedback, and we start a dialogue until we reach that point where we're doing the assessment the way both sides of this want to do it. And that we get a good product out of it. And we can make good decisions based on it. So, at that point, I will open the floor to questions.
You just mentioned that the faculty who is participating in this, at least in the beginning stages, will be also, we can talk about Calvin, right?
Yes, please do. Or I will.
You're up here.
Yeah, I'm up here. I'll talk about it.
You get to do it.
Okay.
Just because that does add to having input from other people who are doing this in different institutions as well.
Right.
They contribute to the process.
Okay, cool. Thank you for the reminder. Weatherford College is a member of the North Texas Community College Consortium, a group of community colleges, obviously in North Texas. Some are outside, but that's predominantly us. They have started the Consortium Assessment Leadership Institute. And this is a group where each institution sends up to 6 faculty. And what we do is we look at assessment processes. We look at how we can improve those assessment processes and start communicating among all the different institutions in the North Texas area, exchanging ideas, coming up with new ideas and things of that nature. Then we will bring that back to the college and then share it with all of the faculty and staff. And hopefully, the plan is, through this process, we'll build our assessment abilities to a greater degree. Instead of just kind of organically finding our way, we'll have a set of resources that help put us on a path to get where we want to be, as soon as we all decide where that is. So.
And we're still involved in some ways with LEAP, provided we're waiting for information from LEAP about this year since they had a leadership change.
Right.
But I think there's a meeting at the end of SACS. So that's just another way for the college to get information from people outside the college. You're also doing this process because one of the things that I've learned in doing this, helping in different capacities, is that information sharing is really necessary for assessment. To see, you know, and a number of listservs where you get information from what one institution is doing and what another is doing, and people actually ask for advice and things of that nature. So it's kind of, this is certainly one area where hearing a number of different voices matters. And another thing that we are going to be doing is reaching across campus too, and I shouldn't say it quite that way, and I'm thinking the fact that my office is down here. But we'll have, you know, be working with student services on different, because there are multiple assessment committees, so, right. So working eventually, especially as we're looking at results with student services and
business services and all the areas of the college will come together under that. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I see how it benefits y'all, like the campus as a whole to do these assessments, but how is it going to benefit the students for y'all doing these assessments?
Okay, that's a good question. There's 2 levels at which we can talk about that. On the structural level of the institution, when we do our assessments on our processes, the more information we have about that, the better that we get at doing that, so that, you know, if we have a plan for advising and we look at the parameters and we see, okay, this is the best way we can do it, that makes advising more efficient for students. Students get the accurate information across the entire campus. They get processed much quicker. They're able to get the classes that they need, assuming that they're open and things of that nature. So it can help us serve students better from the institutional point of view. From the core assessment point of view, you can ask probably every faculty member on this campus and get a different answer. But the answer I'm going to provide is basically that when we look at these core competencies and see how students perform, and let's say critical thinking, for example. Critical thinking is broken into 5 areas, and we can tell where the student is strongest. Are they strongest in criteria 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? So if we start looking at the patterns on our college campus for critical thinking, we see criteria 3 is scoring low across all of our students, then we've got a target where we can improve our pedagogy and our curriculum. So we can teach better if we use the data in that fashion. It tells us what's going on. We just have to listen and be ready to make the changes to our teaching and in some cases to our curriculum in order to meet that need. Does that make sense?
So you're trying to get away from these teachers that are only giving tests to show that you understand the material to where they have to do different things to see if you actually comprehend the material.
Well, I wouldn't say that's what it's going to do.
Because like, not everybody's a good test taker, but they understand the material. Like, they can sit down and tell you everything in the book. And when it comes to the test, you're like, Some teachers, they are a little tricky with their wording.
Right.
They want to make sure that you understand. But then when you don't do so well, they're like, oh, well, I told you everything. But then you're like, well, hold up. If you let me come out here and tell you everything out, essay form, whatever, I can give you everything.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to sit there and tell me that I am not sufficient based on a multiple choice test. Well, I think if you're going to do the assessment like that, you're going to take all these things and you're going to rate us on our critical thinking and all
Right.
that. You should also determine our tests and our grades off of that as well, because not everybody's a good test taker.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. One of the artifacts that we use to evaluate these sometimes are test questions. Sometimes they're written artifacts.
Mm-hmm.
They vary across the curriculum, across the class. The assessment process in this particular context isn't designed to address the issue that you're talking about. That's a different level of conversation between students and faculty in trying to find an optimum way that we can understand a student's mastery of the material. In some cases, that's easy to do. In other cases, it's not. It's going to vary across the curriculum, and that's not really something that assessment can deal with at this level, at the core, but it is something that assessment can deal with if departments say, you know, we talk to these students and we realize that they do understand, but we give them this test and not so much. So it's not the core assessment that can help with this, but it's other types of assessment that look at discipline-specific learning outcomes and try to find out, is there a pattern here? Is there a way that we can make some changes, not to dumb down the curriculum, not to water things down or inflate grades, but to genuinely engage the student in a way that allows us to understand what they know and allows an evaluation to be made that's representative of the rigor that college work has to have. Does that answer the question?
Sort of. If I may interject very quickly, one of the things that assessment do for you, it helps us to identify when students advise themselves, when they didn't go through the proper advising channel. Say, for example, if you are taking a 2,000 level course when you have not taken a 1,000 level course, and then we assess you on critical thinking, chances are that you might come short in some of the criteria. So when we compare you with that student who went through the proper sequential process, advising and taking course appropriately, it tends to flow in that way. So again, assessment enables us to be able to advise students a little bit much better. I'm telling students, before you register yourself for classes, go see an advisor. Maybe they can plug into the right classes to make you more successful at the long run.
Any other questions?
Good. Okay.
Okay.
Question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. One of the, just before I introduce the next speaker, one of the things, our recommendation, I will be taking to the Vice President of Instruction and Student Services will be for us to go through the student government and see how strong our student government here is to assign a student from the student government to assign a student to one committee or to different committees on campus so that they can understand what exactly goes on in those committees, and maybe they can become better students and be able to teach other students coming after them on what to do. So being part, and that's part of being part of, that's going to be part of the college life, to see that you have lived a fulfilled college life, is understanding how things function. In that way, you maybe you can become a better advisor to your own children or friends in the future. All right, that being said, our second speaker, Ms. Shirley Brown, Chair of Department of Mathematics, she is going to talk about the math pathway and its effect across curricula. Mathematics is one of those areas, one of those gray areas that every institution talks about. Students talk about it because it's tied to everything we do. It's tied to your English, it's tied to your social sciences, behavioral sciences, life sciences, all of them. So we are going to hear what Ms. Brown has to tell us today and how she would like to solicit your help to make sure that what we do as an institution is more effective. Thank you. Ms. Brown?
Hi. When we do a program change and adjustment, it's usually a 5-year plan. I've been department chair since 2006, and we have had 4 or 5 5-year plans, which means we never finish a 5-year plan. Unfortunately or fortunately, we are usually on a 2-year plan because every time the legislature meets, they decide to change some of the developmental program. And so in 2015, we started the math pathways because of the legislature at that time. We are now in our 2nd year, or the end of the 2nd year, and we have made immense progress. We have, because we get paid, we get funded by finishing the developmental math, becoming TSI complete, and then we also get a point for funding on finishing their first college level math course to complete the core. For our first, this 2-year program that started in 2015, we have increased the number of students that have completed their first college level math course by over 9%. So we've had that much improvement within the first 2 years of that project. Well, the legislature met again this summer and have passed House Bill 2223. So that has made some adjustments to our program, which will start then in the fall of 2018. So we have a little bit of planning time ahead of us, and hopefully by then we'll have something that will increase it even more. So tied to this is, it also started in 2015, which is the project from the coordinating board called 60 by 30. 60 by 30 is wanting 60% of the Generation Texas will have a post-secondary credentials or degree by 2030. What they are talking about as their goal is that by 2030, we will need 60% of the people that are 25 to 34 to have a degree, post-secondary credentials of some sort. So that would include certificate programs, associate degrees, and also bachelor degrees. So they want 60%. I don't know what the number is right now, but that is the goal by 2030. So you're going to hear more and more about this as we get closer and closer to 2030. So part of that is what we have to do with our developmental math program. This is the current path. So you don't need to do that too much, but we have developed this so that you can see the path towards being Math Core complete with the developmental. This is our current project, of which will be changed by fall 2018. House Bill 2223 is mandating that by fall 2018, 25% of all developmental students, that includes reading and writing, will be in a co-requisite course, which means their developmental course will be in they have to register for both the developmental and the college transfer course. We have 3 levels of that, so that means we are going to have to create 3 levels of co-requisites. But to make the 25% the first year, our concentration will be on the 0332, 1332, which is the contemporary mathematics for liberal arts majors. So that's where are going to be our focus. We hope that that's going to be at least 50% of our developmental students, so that we may have a little bit more time to adjust to creating the one for the college algebra and for the statistics. So by fall 2019, 50% of all developmental students must be in a co-requisite course. And by 2020, 75% of the developmental students must be in that form of mathematics, for those that are requiring developmental. So, fall 2018, our math will begin with, we're going to begin with math 0332 and 1332 combination. That's going to be our focus. It will be in an 8-week model, which means the first 8 weeks they would be taking the developmental, and the second 8 weeks would be the contemporary course. Now there will be some overlap between the objectives, because at certain times when they get so far with the developmental, we might be able to put in some of the college transfer objectives, so there is a smooth transition from one to the other. We've made it an 8-week model so that the students that may not be very successful with the developmental will have an out at the 8-week point where they wouldn't have to take the college transfer course and could repeat the developmental at that time. But the state regulations are that even if they are not being successful with the developmental, they must have the option to take the college transfer. If they pass the college transfer course, then they will get credit and become TSI compliant.
Will there still be 16 weeks math 1332 in the fall?
There will be 16-week 1332s. Those are the ones that come in already TSI compliant.
Right.
These are for all the students that are not TSI compliant when they enroll in the fall.
And Shirley, when you say pass, do you mean pass with a D or pass with a C?
It will have to be a C. It has to be college transferable. In most cases, they don't transfer a D.
Correct.
Some objectives they do. This depends. We will have, that means 6 hours of math they'll have to register for each of those semesters. And then we will have both 4-day-a-week courses, classes, optional, and 2-day-a-week. So the 2-day-a-week, then you're going to have to take a 2-class period. So that's going to be about, 3 hours a day. So we would hope that more students would be available for the 4-day-a-week. That way they'll get smaller pieces and not that much of a concentration. It's sort of like taking summer school. Those math classes are really difficult, especially the developmental level. Okay? So, this will be the new model, and I can send people copies of this if you want to see this. The pathways are getting a little bit more complicated. So that's why we've got arrows going all over the place. You like that?
So it looks like my directions when I give something.
So if they are in, this should be pretty self-explanatory. If they're in 0314, they can always back up. See the arrow, the dotted arrows on the side. Remember, we give them the option the first, before count day, they can always transfer down to a lower level math class. The addition here will be Math 0342, because we will have to have a pathway for the statistics so that they can, if they want to just take statistics, they would not have to do the co-requisite with the 0332. Essentially, it's going to be the current 0332 course renamed 0342. And then what we'll do, we are currently working on the objectives that are needed to be successful in 1332. So the 0332 course is going to be redesigned and concentrate on the objectives needed to be successful in 1332. So that's currently being worked on. So the only new course we're going to have is the 0332. Because the 0342.
0342.
0342 is going to be the current 0332 renamed.
Yeah, but it will be the first time that shows on a schedule.
Right. I got to get that in the catalog too. By Friday. And so we've got arrows going all over the place. We have the 0332 will be TSI complete non-algebra. So if they do need to take college algebra, they will have to take the 0314 to become TSI complete college algebra ready. And the 0342 would be the same thing. It would be non-college algebra ready. Yes?
So then surely that they'll be moving laterally sometimes. For example, you have a student whose developmental score is on the lower end of that range, right under the college level.
Mm-hmm.
And they place into 0332. But they actually are going to need 1314. So we're going to do 0332, 0314, then up into 1314. And that's the only way they can go?
Right, because we have two designations.
Okay.
TSI complete non-algebra, which will only give them the ability to take statistics and contemporary.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one from 0314 is TSI complete college algebra ready. So that's the only way they can get into college algebra. The contemporary will not prepare them at all to get to the college algebra.
So a student comes to us for advising and their math 0301. They're just gonna take math 0301 the whole fall semester. And
Right.
then the spring semester, then they may take 0332 the first 8 weeks and then math 1332 the second.
Mm-hmm. And so they can still, the whole goal is for the state of Texas, they want students that come in to be TSI complete and have their first college level math course completed by their first year.
So Shirley, on those scores, are we going to be differentiating from the low end of that spread and the higher end as to what developmental math they are capable of going into?
That is going to have to be something that we pair with you all in student services to figure out about those scores. Because I don't think anything like that is regulated by the state of Texas.
Right. Of course, as you know, we do have the numbers to prove what happens.
Yes, we've done
When a
studies.
student makes a 332 and tries to take 0314.
Yes, we've done that, and success at the college algebra has been at 356, not the minimum 350.
Right.
But a lot of times they are always in there at 350, 351, and they usually do not do well in college algebra.
And we have the numbers to prove that as well.
Yes, we do.
It's not funny, but we have
At
them.
least for
So-
our population. I think
35%
35%.
currently meet the 60 by 30 goal.
And what do we have to do?
We have to get to 60%.
But that's all 2018.
25% of our students must be registered this way, but by 2030, we have to get 60% of our students completing a degree, and we are right at 35%.
Well, we're halfway there.
Yeah, we're halfway there.
Positive thinking, right?
Okay. What we need from the other departments. Math is a capstone or keystone course. They have proven that those that finish that math course, college transfer math course, they will finish their degrees. And so we need to make sure that the departments are looking at their degrees and seeing their degree plans. Do they need college algebra? Is contemporary acceptable for the four-year institutions that they're going to be transferring to? So that's an assessment that each individual department needs to look at so that they can advise their students properly. A lot of times I talk to students that are not doing well in college algebra, and most of them have said, well, I just want my basics. College algebra is no longer just the basic math course you need. I think most of our improvement by 9% has to do with those students that have taken contemporary as opposed to getting into college algebra and starting that failure spiral of taking the course, not doing well, taking it again, not doing well, until they realize that they need to get either into a developmental course or contemporary will satisfy their degree. So those are things that other departments can do to help us, and also the advising to make sure that they look into what they need to get their degree. That's also going to help us to meet that 60% by 2030. Make sure that there is a smooth transfer between the community colleges and the four-year institutions so they don't have to repeat any courses. They are now currently also resurrecting the P16. The P16 project was pre-K through grade 16 and make it a smooth transition. So that's where part of the work needs to be done for those coming from high school, that they're actually prepared to take college courses. So the state is looking at the whole thing, not just a little piece. Okay? Yes?
Just one thing to add, when others are looking at degree plans for transfer, the buzzword is college math. College math does not necessarily equal college algebra.
Yeah, when you look at a degree plan at a four-year institution, if it says college level math, contemporary statistics works. Only when they specify need college algebra are they on a STEM path where they need college algebra. So if it just says college level math course, that's contemporary and statistics also satisfy those. So it's no longer one size fits all where they have to take college algebra. Only those that are going to be STEM majors. Okay. What we also are asking for is a common vocabulary. I was talking to another instructor a week or so before Thanksgiving, and they were talking about trying to explain to a student how their grade point average is figured out. Well, that's a weighted average. We teach that in 0332 and 1332, and we call it weighted average because you're weighting it by how many grade points you have and things like that. So we teach it. There's also other things that you probably need for your subject areas that we teach. We just may not be using the same language that you are. We do mixture problems. And I know chemistry classes, they mix those chemicals together. Have you ever seen one of these problems before? No. We know that you teach this stuff and you expect us to teach. So we need some examples of problems that you use in your classrooms so that we are using exactly the same language so they know that math is used in chemistry, physics, biology,
Economics.
nursing.
Economics.
So, do what?
Economics.
And economics. Because we do EUP. I know you don't know what that means, but if you're an economics teacher, you do. And then supplies with applications. That would be very helpful so that we can actually use applications that you use in your classrooms and make it more relevant to them. We teach them. It just may not be using the same language you're using. That's what we need. So, if anybody needs to get some further information, I have the websites on the 6030. That's what the top two are. And then this is House Bill 2223. If you want to look at that, it's written in legalese, so it's not that easy to understand, but if you want to read that kind of stuff, knock yourself out. I can give it to you. You don't have to copy that.
I know I didn't bring my phone.
Anybody have any questions?
Well, one question I have is, what are the high schools doing under the 60 by 30 to help the students prepare for college? I know one of the big shifts was putting the students on the distinguished plan, which supposedly should prepare them for college. Many kids are coming out, graduating on the distinguished plan, but yet not ready for college. So there still appears to be a gap between high school and college readiness.
There is a big gap. I was working on P16 5-6 years ago, and it kind of died away. I haven't heard anything, and now it's being resurrected. We had workshops for the local high schools, and they just were not that cooperative. So hopefully, since we're doing more dual credit, and giving them, supplying them with more and more information about what we're doing here and showing them where they can find it on our website. That will help. But again, it's going to have to be communication, of which we are not in control of what happens. So, unfortunately, we can only give them the information as far as what our developmental courses entail and what we would expect them to know before they become college ready. And it's up to them to.
Yeah, I was just curious to know what's being done at the other end. I know we don't have control over that.
P16 I just started hearing about it about a month or two ago. It had been a big initiative 5-6 years ago, and then all of a sudden it kind of died away, and now it's coming back. And I think it's part of this 60-30 because they want a smooth transition between the elementary school to the middle school to the high school to the community colleges, and then to the four-year institutions, so that they can meet this goal of 60%. Yes, ma'am.
What are the percentage of students who are coming into the college who are college math ready versus those who are required to take the developmental courses?
About 49%
Are ready?
are ready.
They still have some deficiencies, and so some of them do choose to go back and take a developmental course first, especially if there's been a 3 to 4 year gap or more. And so they do benefit from taking the developmental.
Lee, when you pulled that percentage though, that was based on strictly on the cut score on the TSI.
Right, it was based on the cut score
Right.
of the TSI for incoming freshmen.
Right.
And it's pretty consistent over the last about 3 or 4 years.
As far as the percentage, but then what that translates to, you've got 49% who by score
Mhm.
are college ready, but then when they enter into college algebra, they are not ready.
Right.
They can't pass it.
Yeah, whenever they hit reality, things change.
Yeah.
It's
So there's a
community
disconnect
colleges.
there.
Community colleges do have a higher percentage of the students that are not college ready.
Yeah.
Four-year institutions, this 25% of developmental is not going to hit them as hard because they have fewer students.
Shirley, I think it's still the case, a lot of students aren't taking any math their senior year. They finish it, their algebra 1 and 2, is that still the case? And so
Yeah.
they've got that gap of a year off.
Yeah, that's the problem, and I try to encourage them to tell all of their friends that are still in high school to take math their senior year, or attempt to dual credit. We have online dual credit classes, and that way they don't have that break. Yes, ma'am.
Something I saw with the whole senior year not taking a math thing. The school I graduated from, they didn't offer, I mean, you could do college algebra for dual credit. The only other math they offered was it was called Money Matters. And it was supposed to be real world math, which was like balancing your checkbook, how to take out a loan. And so more kids thought that was more important and chose real world math instead of doing dual credit, even though they were perfectly capable. And it ended up kind of messing up at least the kids I graduated with, and myself especially, because I had to do a developmental thing in between because of that year I missed out on. So
There's nothing wrong with taking a developmental math course.
right, yeah.
It's filling in the pieces. It's like a Jenga game. You know, if you've got a very bad foundation, you can get so far, and then it's gonna collapse on one piece that you should have reviewed or had gotten some additional information
But
on.
do you
So
think that marketing those classes in that way to students, saying this is real world stuff, this is what you're really gonna need, as opposed to you don't need college algebra?
Well,
Well-
how many of the students how many of your students in your graduating class went to college and how many didn't? You know what I mean, that could play a factor too, because let's say you had 100 students and 75 of them didn't plan to go to college, but 25 of them did. Well, that 75 that took that class probably is making a difference. You know what I mean?
I graduated
So
with
it's kinda-
17 kids.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember where you went to school.
And I think like maybe 6 of us are still in college.
Yeah,
So
it's actually good.
it definitely does make a difference, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so I think that
Well, I'm gonna tell you
the
something.
population that you're dealing with, that, the school that you teach at, no.
I'm gonna tell you something, and I'm not saying this is happening in all the high schools, but it appears sometimes the high schools are just trying to, have the kids just check off courses for the graduation plan. They may not, like, in one instance, we had a student taking level 1, level 2 at the same time. I mean, that doesn't make sense. I can't remember the course, but even with the counselors, I know they're overburdened and everything like that. I'm going to be honest with you all. If there are some students that have advocates, they are left on their own. If they do not have advocates, they will be left on their own. And we deal with that a lot of times. So the school system, the high school, I'm not saying that the teachers there and the people there don't care, but somehow there is a big gap, where they're not, I hate to have to say it this way, but it's like they're not really looking out for the best interest of the child overall. It happens. Not intentionally, but it happens.
Hopefully the P16 initiative will help adjust some of that. Again, it's got to do with the funding and how the high schools have been funded lately, and it's got to be with exemplary school. They get more funding, and so what they do to do, things happen. I taught high school for 10 years, so
But
I've
the
been in
population that you're dealing with at certain schools too, if the majority of the population is students that are first generation students, that their parents don't promote college, or they're like, well, why do you have to take that math? Or why do that? You're not going to college. Or if I think that sometimes is hard on counselors when they talk to a student, what are your plans once you graduate high school? What are you hoping to do? Maybe you should take more math. I think, I think I think the population that you deal with sometimes too may factor in as to, this student doesn't have an interest in college, and in their senior year they go, I want to go to college. So
well, we do
I think that's a harder thing.
we do have the developmental sequence here, which we've developed it for, we've designed, redesigned, and designed again, and so we've gotten it down to pretty good indicator of whether or not they're going to be successful. So, any other questions?
Okay, just before we leave out, a few things I need to mention. I was at the P16 Council that Ms. Brown mentioned, and I spoke with some of the counselors of schools within our service area. All the counselors, none of them ever heard the word 60 by 30 Texas. Never. That was the first time they heard it in their lifetime. Yet, we want to achieve this goal by the year 2030. But the high school counselors don't even know about it. That's one point that I got out of it. And then, of course, as you mentioned, Dr. Kreger, the students advocate. Yes, if you are a first generation to go through high school or college, you're probably on your own in most cases. And this is where your area, Dr. Kreger, TRIO, our program, could work in concert with Dr. Locke, dual credit, getting to these high schools and maybe meeting some of the parents through your program, the dual credit can get to meet those parents who are first generation and maybe give them better counseling or advising on how to prepare for college. All right? So there are a lot of things we have to work together at the college as well as the high school. And then, of course, there is nothing wrong teaching mathematics, because what makes you a successful person or to develop those soft skills is logic and analytical. If you are analytical and you have logic in you, then you can do a whole lot of great things. You can have those soft skills we call communication, you call empathy, you call emotional intelligence, and so on and so forth. All those things are go together. And the other thing I would like to, when we started this forum, we spent a lot of time talking about emotional intelligence. Something I would like us to change a little bit or add to that equation when we come back in the spring will be happiness. How do we achieve happiness? You know, happiness has to tie with healthy living, okay? And how do we achieve this? One thing we want to do as an institution is what I would call work for life and happiness, whereby if instead of taking 1 hour of your time sitting in the cafeteria or in a restaurant somewhere eating food, why don't you take 30 minutes of your time, then spend the rest of 30 minutes walking around the campus? Or spend 30 minutes to visit somebody. Instead of sending them an email, you can call them and say, hey, Crystal Brown, I want to walk over to talk to you. Or can you meet me by the flagpole, we can talk. And then you walk around the campus. If we can do this, and maybe you can just start keeping, enjoy the campus, visit your colleagues, keep up your step counts, those of you keeping your step counts, and then of course, see how many step counts you can keep up with on a weekly basis by taking at least 30 minutes walk every day during your lunch break. And get away from those emails. The person is next door to you. Get up and go to them and talk to them, or have them meet you somewhere and you walk as you talk. So we are going to introduce that when we come back in spring. It's going to be happiness, healthy living, work for life, and it's going to be maybe 50-50 lunch walk, whatever you call it. It's going to be something that we want to see coming up. And then, last but not the least, I'm sure some of you received this in the email today. She didn't even know I'm going to talk about it. Kathy Williams, she sent this for the students in particular, how to cope with stress of final exam. So the Academic Support Center is presenting the last study skills. Okay, it's a workshop, and it's going to be tomorrow and Wednesday in the Academic Support Center, I believe, at 2 o'clock. Tomorrow and Wednesday for the students. So if you have students, I'm sorry?
Large 116.
Okay. The liberal arts building 116, and that's where it's going to be. So for the students, the faculty, staff, send your students who are very much in stress or anxious about the upcoming final exam. They can go over there and get some skills on how to cope with final exam study week. Again, I thank you very much for coming to the forum. Remember, this year is the Dean's Forum. We have quite a few deans in attendance today. If you're a dean, can you stand up? Let me see all the deans in the room. Could you stand up, please? So this year is the Dean's Forum, and thank you very much. So if you have anything in your area you want to channel through any of the deans, you are more than welcome to do so, and then you can take advantage of this forum to share your information with the rest of the institution. And for the students, if you have something of interest that you'd like to share, you can email me or come see me. We'll be more than welcome to have you take the opportunity of this forum to share your information. Does anyone have any question, any other question or concern whatsoever before we let you go for the day? Any questions?
I just wanted to comment.
Yes.
I actually look forward to coming to these sessions very much. It makes me feel that I'm part of the campus. I know what's going on. I'm informed. I feel empowered. I get to meet other people here. And, you know, and in addition, I learned a lot of things as well. So I want to thank you all for getting this going, and please keep it going, because it really makes a difference for me and for a lot of other people as well.
Thank you very much. Good to hear that. Yeah. I'm sorry? Oh, the students, they're sign-in sheet somewhere at the back over there. So if you're a student, you're more than welcome to sign in over there. And again, this year is the last forum for the semester. When we come back in the spring, we come back in January, but our first Dean's Forum will be in February. And remember, if it's the last Monday of the month, it is the Dean's Forum. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again next semester.